In this lesson, we're going to look at the drums for task 1C. Now, we're specifically creating a house track, so you really want to be using a drum machine for this. And as said in the previous lesson, we're probably going to use the drum machine for quite a few of our tracks, just purely because it's such a versatile tool. And it's like a mini sequencer all to itself, to be fair, and recording engine and all the rest of it. So you will need to become very, very familiar with your drum machine. Now, the one we're going to be using is called Ultrabeat, and it's a fantastic instrument. This lesson will probably take a little bit of time, and it will get a bit complex, but I'm going to try and recap it in some of the other lessons as well, just so that we can kind of consolidate some of this information. So in this lesson, we're just going to look at how to create the drum track. Now, a few things first. You'll notice since last lesson, I've changed my layout ever so slightly, and I've also included my reference track. Now, it's important to say that I'm not really copying this track, but I'm just taking ideas, and I just think it's a lot easier to deal with if my ideas are inside of my sequencer, inside of Logic. So I'll probably include a few other reference tracks as well. And one thing that I do to clean up my section is just hide everything. So if I just press this hide button, you'll notice it's gone. So I can use that as a reference track. You'll see it's muted, but I can hide it when I'm not using it. And I'll probably import a few other kind of audio tracks as references as well, just so I can take some of them down, including the actual song Seven Nation Army. Now, let's look at where we're at with this particular piece. Now, the drums have to be a little bit interesting, but it's important to get them down at the beginning of your arrangement, even if they're not the final piece. Now, the reason I say that is because it's easy to build on top of drums than not to build on and try and build it from a different angle. So I always put down the drums first and then I build on top, and I may come back and I may rearrange the drums and add some extra elements into it and tweak them ever so slightly and mix them and all the rest of it. For now though, we're taking a technique straight from Pump Up the Volume. Now it's kind of a minimalist technique developed by Steve Wright during the 1960s, 1970s. And the idea with this is that you've got a pattern, in this case a drum beat, and then rather than starting with that pattern, you build it up. So as you can see from my intro here, and I've purposely left 4 bars, okay? This is because I'm taking the Seven Nation Army intro where it builds with the guitar and then the drums come in. Now, it starts here and I've just added the bass drum, so just this 4-to-floor kick that's quite typical of house music. Then I've added a little snare, then I've added hi-hat, then I've added more hi-hat here, then I've added some congas, then I've added some snare, then I've broken it back. Actually, sorry, my bad. This one is just bass drum and snare again because I'm doing it in the break. Then I've just broken it down even further just so that I can have this breakdown section where it's just the bass drum again. And you'll notice that these colours are exactly the same as these, just because I'm copying and pasting. And then I finally got this crossover section. Now, like in Pump Up the Volume, when they get to their middle section, they actually use a completely different drum pattern. So I wanted to do that in this as well, and just kind of use a different drum pattern and then develop it further. By the time we get to development 3, I'm actually using the full sample, okay? And then by the time I'm halfway through that, I've added this in and developed it even further. And it's just an arrangement of my drums. Now, I would say to you guys, develop a few sequences, so definitely 1 sequence, maybe 2 or 3, and then have a little play with them and arrange them and see how they work out. I think that's pretty much all I've got to say about the arrangement of these drums. This is basically my kind of copy and paste sheet, and the way I've done this, in Ultrabeat and in most other drum machines, you have some really interesting pattern sequences. Now in this one, hopefully I'm on the right track, yeah. In this one, if you click on this button here, you'll come down and you'll see that there are absolutely hundreds of different kits, okay? So the one we're using is this Electro House kit. Now with that selected, what you're going to notice, and this is really good if you're not a very good drum programmer, and drums is really not your thing, this is going to save you a mountain of time, okay? Because what all these drum kits have are these pattern editors. So if you come down here, and anything with this SQ next to it means that there's a sequence attached to it. Now let me just come over here to the full screen. This is my sequencing pattern, so I can just click on anything I want and I can add extra notes and they'll play. So if we listen to this, and we listen to this, any of these have sounds on them, okay? So if I wanted to, I could come down here and I go, okay, let's go to sequence 2, and you'll notice a new drum pattern's come up. Now let's just turn this on, press play, and you'll notice it's playing. Okay, if we don't like that, we can come down to the next one, and then we'll notice another drum pattern's playing. Okay, and so on. Anything with SQ next to it has a drum pattern. Now, let's say we like this, but it's not completely the way we want it. We want to add a bit more, and you should, because if you want to get all the marks, you need to be in control of editing some of these things, okay? So the one way in which you do that is right-click on where it says 3 sequence. Make sure you actually have your sequence up. Right-click and copy. Now, if you click on this down arrow again, you'll notice that there's these ones at the bottom that don't have any sequences on them. So click on number 14, and a good rule of thumb is I always leave a gap between the sequences that are built for me and my own. And that way it just kind of declares to me that these are my own ones, okay? So with that selected, we'll right click again and let's paste it in. Now, with that pasted in, we can just click on the ones we don't want, add the ones we do want, and we can make our own arrangement, and we can press play, and we can see if we like it, and so on and so forth, okay? So that's one really good way. If you're not a drum programmer or you're not very confident at doing drums, you've got thousands to choose from and thousands that you can come in and edit and make your own, okay? And that's completely acceptable as long as you change them to make them your own in lots and lots of fashions. That's completely acceptable. It's not really acceptable to use them as they are, and the examiners will know. It's quite obvious. Apple loops are kind of phenomenal for being kind of standoutish, so make sure you do change them. Now, getting this onto the stage, we have to do 2 things now. First thing, we have to turn the sequencer off. If we don't, your drum pattern will just keep playing, and we don't want that. Second thing is we get this button here and we drag it to the stage. So let's go to my drum beat and we drop it in there, and voila, we have our drum beat. If we solo this, you should be able to hear it. Oops. Okay, obviously I don't want that there, so I'm going to delete that. Now, actually undo that. Now, another thing that you can do once it's on stage is something like I did here. And remember, it's this Steve Reich thing where things build up. So all I did is Alt, click, drag a few times. Alt, click, drag a few times. So we've got a few copies of it. Now, I don't really want to do that. Now, let's go to the piano roll. Now, in the piano roll, we can come in and you'll notice that we've now got a MIDI editor version of our Ultra Beat. And all I did is select the notes I didn't want. So let's go to these first notes and delete them. So now in my first section, I've just got these things playing here, and I really only want that first one. And then in the next one, I'll just build it up even further. And just build it up and build it up. And this gives you this nice kind of feeling that everything's developing, everything's moving on. And you will gain a few marks, because one of the criteria for this particular task is that does it sound overly repetitive? So by doing this kind of technique, you kind of cancel out that repetitive nature of this bit. Okay, I have 2 more things I want to show you about the drum machine. Now, as said previously, it's quite a beast that we're going to be using, and I will be using it for a lot more tracks. So I'm going to try and introduce you to a couple of things each lesson, just so you can develop these ideas, okay? So the next thing is, how do you manipulate what you've got on the actual drum machine itself? So down here, if we just select the note, so here we have this flange hi-hat. If we right click down in this velocity gate section, you'll notice that you can actually have randomized velocities. Now that's really useful. You can obviously move them yourself just by clicking and dragging them, make them louder. And if you click and drag them to the left or the right, you can actually make the sample last a bit longer. It's called gating. Now, you can also randomize this. So you can press randomize velocities, and there you go. You can press randomize gating, and there you go. And it changes the length of these individual squares, which is a really handy tip, okay? So that's the first thing. Now, what if you want to have different sounds on this particular kit? Now, there's a few ways of doing this. One of the ways that I like to do it is by using the import button. So by pressing the import button, you can go to your Ultra Beat kits, click on, say, drum kits, and then you can bring in another kit. So let's go to one of these kits. Now, you can select these. Okay, Okay, so we like the organ. We're going to have some organ stabs, and we can just drag that to the top there. Very nice. Okay, now let's go to our full view, and now with that in, we can just press that, and now we can include our organ. And that is one very quick way of changing the sample. So if you wanted another bass drum, if you weren't completely happy with this pulse bass drum, you could change that as well. I'm not going to do it because I'm actually using it. So, but you could. So you just press the down button. Do you like that? If you don't like it, let's go back to the import button. And let's choose another kit. So it's just a really nice way of bringing in other samples. Another way of bringing in samples is from the media panel. Now if you go over to your media panel, here's some drum loops. Now each track, if you select it, brings up this, and this is a new panel just for that particular sample. So let's go back to my organ here, and here is where you drag and drop the new sample to. So I'm not sure if this will work because it's a full loop, but let's just do it. So click, drag and drop, and it did work, fantastic. And if you're not sure what it sounds like, you can press play, okay? Or you can press play up here. Okay, so it's a fully fledged sampler, and that's fantastic. Okay, that's how you get the instruments in. Now, last thing before we kind of let you guys get on with it, and I'm doing something really interesting on this drum kit here. And this is kind of advanced technique, so you have to bear with me on this one. Now, what you're going to see is that there is this note here. It is a singular clap, okay? Let me just see if I can get it up. I think I might have turned it off. Right, it's a singular clap. And I've got it routed to another channel so I can add delay to it, okay? So let me just see if it's working. Okay, so I've turned it off. Let me just reactivate that. So here it is. Take it off of solo. Now here we go. So as you can hear, the clap has like several beats to it, and that's because I've routed it to aux 1. Now let me just turn those off so you can actually hear it on its own. The reason this is possible is because Ultrabeat is a multi-output instrument, so it allows us to have multiple outputs. Now let me show you how to get to that. Now on my instrument here, you'll notice that my clap is routed to 3 and 4, whereas everything else is routed to main, okay? So in order to access this, you need to set up a new aux channel. So go options, create new aux channel, and then a new aux channel will appear over here. Now from your aux channel, aux 1, you need to then route the input to your designated Ultrabeat output, okay? So go down to here, there it is, select it, and then all I've done is add an insert of Delay Designer. And this is what makes it all really awesome. This is a preset, complete preset, so Poly Sweep is just under there, or you can use any, you can try any. I'm not going to change that because I really like that, but give it your best shot. One thing you will notice when you pull it in is that the aux 1 channel is turned off by default, so you do need to turn it up, okay? And with that in mind, that's why you're going to get something a little bit more interesting. And you could try that with any of your channels because they all have these routing options. So if you wanted to route it to another channel, you could, and it's quite flexible. There's a lot there to take in, so I'm not going to bombard you with any more. I'd like you to have a go at those few things just so you get yourself familiar with Ultrabeat. We will be using it quite a lot, but before we go, I'm just going to play you my build up just so you can hear how mine is progressing, okay? Okay, as you can see, it's developing really nice, and I've given myself a really nice foundation to work from. Now, give it your best shot. Get your drum ideas down before you start the next lesson, and then we'll start looking at some bass ideas using some other tools as well. But we're probably going to stick with Ultra Beat and kind of develop those skills as well. Okay, see you in the next lesson.